correct people are here, our district leadership team. So as I talked to you guys this morning, I said that in Florida, we have learned that we work only with school districts. We are funded in Florida, are funded through our Florida Department of Education to build district capacity in addressing behavior through PBIS. And so everything that we provide is free to districts and schools within Florida for public schools systems. But we work predominantly with those school teams because we want to build your capacity. It doesn't mean that we won't go out to schools, but we won't go out to schools if district folks aren't there with us to build their skills in that process. So I'm going to talk to you about this district action plan for PBS. And Wes and his crew have made a tremendous amount of resources for you. People have asked, are there data available? Some of you have data that you've already completed BOQs, some have not completed BOQs yet, and some have some in, some not, and it's okay. We're all in different points, different entries. Everybody does not have to be in the same place. You will never ever be in the same place, and that's perfectly fine. Do you have the overheads slides that I will be going through? Okay, good. So you have those. I didn't change anything last night or on the plane here, so you will have all the same information. I've given you a lot of sample district action plans, or not a lot, just two of them in particular that I thought were exemplar from some of our Florida districts we had co-created with them in facilitating this process. I also have an action plan for you guys as well, which you're going to be using throughout the 2 hours. All right, so my goal is just to get you guys on this track to develop a district plan. It's going to provide this roadmap of how you guys are going to be promoting PBIS across all of your schools. You know, and I talked to you this morning briefly about this, but this is our implementation blueprint, the components along with it. And so, essentially for you guys as a district leadership team, I want you to think about yourselves as sort of the parents for your schools. You are the role models for how you want things to work at your school district. And here's where it starts to get tricky and kind of scary, because what districts will start to realize as they're forming a vision, they've formed their goals, they're realizing what resources do we have already, what resources do we need to allocate or spend more time trying to have work better for us, which then all of a sudden sometimes they go, we need to restructure, reorganize. Well, we are. Because we're all in silos, and we're all doing a lot of the same stuff, but we're doing it in parallel play. So how do we come together? And that's where sometimes this district action planning process slows down. Because we all know when it comes to restructuring, it's like, oh, we already did that. We just changed the flow chart. You know, I just found my new desk. You know, but again, our goal is to think about what makes sense. How can we be most efficient, work collaboratively to all achieve the same outcome we're working towards. So what I want to make sure that we're clear on today is that you guys are developing a vision for your district. You're starting to craft some 1-year and 3-year goals. If you want to get even loftier and start to create 5-year goals, that's okay. But I'd like to at least walk away with a few 3-year goals, and then we'll go through each of these component items of what that means, what you may need to address. Because all of you are going to have some resources in all of these areas already, but then you're going to find that you have maybe lacking in some areas. And again, keeping in mind that what I'm going to be talking to you guys about, obviously you've got to keep the student as the focus, which you guys all know that. But sometimes we get caught up in a lot of bureaucratic red tape where we miss this student focus. But what I'm going to be doing is always making sure that everything that's happening on the national level, because we work closely with the U.S. Department of Education, but what also is being infused and happening in Texas, that gets filtered down to Region 19 so they can get that information to you. Because the last thing you want to be doing is start going in a completely different direction. You find out the TEA is going to be doing this. Not saying that TEA always comes up with the most innovative plans. No state department is absolutely perfect in any state, but we all know that we want to make sure where we get funding for things, we've got to use certain lingo from whatever our funders are telling us to do. All right, so we're going to have to look at some of our barriers, what potential barriers that might impede us from successful implementation of PBIS. We're also going to be talking about our resources that are needed. What resources do we we actually have available, what infrastructure do we need, and then how could we possibly realign our existing resources. So I've been spending a lot of time in districts working with this now, that realigning initiatives or resources, because we've got a lot of great things happening, but they happen in silo, and what makes them so great is people are focused just on those, and that's what they're doing. It's like point A to point B, and they're doing it great. Problem is, we never ever look up, and we never know where we are in the big picture and how it's affecting everything. And so this is going to force us to have to step back, look outward, and see all of the various things that are happening. How can we start to pull them together? Because there aren't enough people to pull from. And it's not always necessarily more people that we truly need. What we need is to have a real common purpose, a common vision, with common goals working together. And sometimes what we find is we actually have too many people. There's too many people of sometimes dead weight, not doing something clearly towards achieving a goal. So again, I'll let you guys figure that out. As I talked again about this morning, these are the areas we'll be building on, this action plan here, because that's what's going to lead to change, because without that action plan, you guys are going to have false starts. And so we're going to talk about what the roles and responsibilities are for a district leadership team, what you would need to do to be able to support schools, but also what you guys would need to do to help guide them to make sure that what they're doing is with fidelity, but also working towards your district's overall improvement plan, that it's all part of the whole thing. So let's look at just big picture of developing this PDIS plan. I'm going to give you some time to work on an activity in just a few minutes. Remember, districts are successful with the sufficient resources. The smallest changes result in the biggest difference. Let's set our goals. We want big 5-year goals, but we're going to have to start addressing the 1-year goals today. We're going to have a clear action plan, we know ongoing self-assessment using your data, so that's why Region 19 wanted to make sure that you guys had your data available so that you could start looking at it. And then access to an external agent, so Region 19 is going to be your resource, that external coach to you guys. But what I want you guys to think about is what you've developed, because it's a draft in progress. So we're getting going on this, but knowing that you'll probably take this back and you guys will have to meet and work through and think more so. Because what's going to happen is when you guys develop some goals today, it's going to force you to go, you know what, wait, are we aligned with our vision? Maybe our vision needs to change. Like I heard some of the discussion over here, you guys are saying, I don't want this just for the students. I want everybody who works for our district. Not just district people, but all the faculty following along and being respectful and responsible as well. So I think you guys had the word student in yours. Well, that might be something where all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute. If we're to be the role models and kind of the parents for all the schools, we're going to have to do this too. So I want you to think, if we want our school teams using data for decision making, meeting regularly, that means you guys are going to have to be using data for decision making. You're going to have to be meeting regularly about this. And then if we want them to be disseminating information based on the interventions they come up with, that means you as a district team, you're going to have to figure out how are we going to be disseminating information to our schools and to our stakeholders of what's happening in our district. So just things to think about on that. All right, so I'm going to move in here. One of the next things is we think about what your role is on the district leadership team. But I'm not going to give you time to actually think through what your role may be on this yet, because I want you to hear more about what various roles could be on that team. So we know functional leadership teams, I talked about this morning, ensure that common language, that common understanding. They identify who has responsibility for what and how they're held accountable. They ensure district policies are supported and not barriers to implementation. That is definitely going to affect your student code of conduct. Okay? And if you think that your student code of conduct is okay the way it is, trust me, as you guys start to get more proficient in all working together and aligning your resources, you're going to probably see you're going to need to do revisions. And I hate to say that because I hate doing editing, but that's the life the way it is. Because you keep learning as you're going. Provide sufficient support, that professional development and technical assistance to ensure that implementation plan and timelines are achieved, and identify those school and district leaders who have implementation expectations. So this is where it gets to not only superintendent level leadership, but who are your school leaders? Like, there's some principals here who are actually engaged in the expectations that you have for implementing PBIS with fidelity. But how can we also start to build this in overall for all of our future leaders and current leaders across our district in the annual performance review? I know I've got districts now that's part of the hiring process in HR. They want people to be able to articulate what PBIS means. And they want them to be able to have, say, certain trigger points to know that that's okay. And that needs to pass at that district level interview, and it needs to pass at the school level interview before they're hired. But again, that's a district that has made significant changes and starting to build their infrastructure. So, again, we know effective leadership teams, this applies to you guys, that clear vision for change. So again, this draft vision that you just came up with, you'll need to be wordsmithing it so it's so clear, because that's something you're going to disseminate to the rest of the folks, your stakeholders. Focusing on the schools, creating those relationships with your stakeholders. So one of the things that's going back to what we talked about this morning is you have to identify who your stakeholders are. You know, and again, it's your students, it's your faculty, it's the other folks that work with district administration, your community agencies, your communities, your families. Are there other stakeholders that you guys need to recruit? Who are those folks, and then who are the people we need to start building relationships with? Engaging in problem solving, that's using our data to determine what we are doing. And too often districts and states just start something, they get excited about some PD model, and they push it like crazy, and they never use data to determine, do our schools even need this? Okay? So again, you've got to always make sure that you're letting your goals and your data lead the direction that you're going. Identifying, correcting the barriers and goals. Applying appropriate strategies based on school needs. Remember this morning I talked about the triangle, and I said that all schools are going to receive a certain amount of support, but some of your schools that may have intense needs, whether it's based on the students, or there's a lot of morale issues at that school, or it's just a higher need school for whatever reason, they may need more intensive level supports from your district. Okay? Evaluating the effectiveness of implemented strategies. So, some of you who've completed some initial data on your schools, you'll be able to pull that together and start to look and see how well are our schools doing across the board. And investing in professional development. So the difference, though, is that we're using our data to determine who needs more training, who needs the same retraining that they've gotten before and clearly aren't implementing, and who just clearly needs just continual support. They've maxed it out, and they just need support from us ongoing. But again, it's your data driving that. All right, so activities that typically district leadership teams engage in. Attending an annual planning meeting. So this is something we require at a minimum in Florida. But what I'm going to be talking to Wes about is that the more that Region 19 is able to participate in your district leadership team meetings, I think at a minimum district leadership teams need to be meeting about just PBIS at least quarterly. If there are data, if there's activity that's happening in their schools and you've got data, there's plenty to be talked about, at least quarterly, but at a minimum it needs to be one time a year. Identifying and evaluating who those coaches will be. I know this is somewhat of a new concept for this area, and that's all right because other folks are in different areas for coaching, but thinking about how do we extend what's been learned with PD and continue to sustain that. Okay, so we're going to need coaches. So some of that discussion that typically occurs with the district leadership team is to determine who would be the most ideal coaches. Because we have districts that will say, you know what, we don't have the resources at the district level to pull external coaches. We're going to have the schools have internal coaches. Whoever is based at that school can be an internal coach, just knowing that person leaves once a month for half a day for additional training through the ESC. Okay, fine. But then the question becomes, do you have to provide more direction for your administrators on who those coaches should be? You know, some districts will say, no, it's all of our behavior analysts. Some say, no, our school psychologists are going to be the coaches. Because we're going to work with that department and improve their skills across the tiers and providing support. I have some say, I don't care who the administrator chooses, as long as it's not a classroom teacher, because we don't want them pulled out of the classroom to go to these meetings once a month. But the district leadership team gets to make that decision of what they want to be able to, the message to convey to the principals. Identifying which schools are receiving training. So for you guys, all your schools have been trained, but then figuring out, does anybody need to go through retraining based upon the number of years that have gone by? And then what types of trainings are needed? For you guys who've gotten Tier 1 training, but the question becomes, how well is everybody doing at Tier 1? Does anybody need a booster or refresher at Tier 1? Who's ready to move on for Tier 2 training? And then for you guys, it's one of these, okay, we haven't done Tier 1 training yet. We want to take on all of our schools, just a couple of schools, and what's going to be the process that we go in making that decision? Because the last thing we want is to make administrators mad if their school wasn't chosen, or if their school was chosen and they don't want to go to training. So, all right, coordinating with that external agent, that's Region 19. Providing support for coaching activities, and I'm going to be talking about what each of these look like. But it means the district is saying we are committed to not only the implementation, but the sustainability, which means we are committed to having coaches continue to build their skills and provide supports to the schools. And this covers those implementation component areas. And then monitoring the progress of the teams. So again, those of you who have MOQ data will be looking at overall how those teams are doing from there. And essentially, the organization is your school district, okay, as a whole. You as a leadership team engage in all of these different practices, but the same is true for some of these activities also for the school-based teams. We want them to be engaged in evidence-based practices. We want them to implement. We want them to make sure that they're focused under an implementation plan just like you, okay? We're gonna need to use data. We're going to need to make sure the goals we come up with are actually measurable. Okay. So again, what we're doing, we're going to expect the same of the school. Right. So let's talk about PBI's district coordinators. So if Region 19 has a question, or say TEA has a question, they say, hey, do you have a school or a district that's doing exemplary stuff? They would be going to the district coordinator to say, hey, we've got somebody who wants to come visit. The district leadership team process. Typically, the district coordinator is the one who's making sure, let's set up our meetings, let's have a location, set the agenda, and work with either set up the whether it's PowerPoint, compile the data, or work with Region 19 in that process. They're helping to see overall with funding. So, for example, one of the states I'm working with right now, they have educational service centers too. And they were able to get $700,000 from the governor to build money into their educational service centers and have these climate specialists, which their job is only to do PBIS to make sure it's done with fidelity in their regions. And so what they're wanting to do is to ask for another $2 million to get 2 full-time people at each of these regional service centers to support that. And I said, what do your data look like? And they were like, well, we've got a lot more schools that want to come to training. And I said, okay, that's one data point. What impact have these people who are in these positions made already? Give the justification of why it's working. So that's something that the district coordinator, for example, if they say, gosh, guys, the district team, we really need to have money set aside for data entry clerks. Because if we have a data entry clerk, they're getting it in on time, they're looking at the data, they're making decisions, they're having less problems and less to deal with for kids being moved to alternative settings. Okay, well that makes sense for the district leadership team. But if we were to go in and just say, hey, we just need more for data entry clerks, it's a good idea. That's not enough data oftentimes for district leadership teams to make decisions. So again, that district coordinator is somebody who's kind of funneling the information from the schools, the implementation of what's happening, to determine where do we need to make improvements and reallocate some of our resources. Visibility and political support. helping to build that visibility. Talking about if there are other administrators who are not here around the table, how are you going to start marketing this to them? What conversations need to be occurring? You want to start getting your families and community members involved. What types of products do you need to have? Do you need to have some that are in Spanish and English? And how are you going to do that? Do you need to have on-site meetings? Who's going to start to have these conversations? Do you need to put things on your website? Do you need to have something in the school marquee? Well, what if one of your schools is not doing what you guys recommended? What are you going to do for follow-up? The development of the coaching facilitators. Again, this is typically that district coordinator's responsibility to oversee the meetings of those coaches that are coming together. They're bringing the school data, they're problem solving the data as a group, and they're continuing to build their skills and network with each other. Training schedules, I'll go back up here. That district coordinator is working with whoever's providing that training. So if it's coming from Region 19, again, setting up and talking to the administrators to make sure everybody's in the right spot. And then the participating school data, making sure, looking at that data, are folks entering their data? What do the data look like? That is going to help determine what you need to do for the next coaching meeting to provide supports. Dissemination of the data and newsletters. So some districts like to get into creating a newsletter to disseminate the great information that they're doing. I just got one yesterday actually from Southside in San Antonio, or it may have been South San Antonio. It's one of those two. But they do a newsletter every quarter. And so they're pulling together highlights of what's happening at each school, and they put it into a nice 2 to 4 page document. Yeah.
Is there a way to share that?
Yeah, I can send it to Wes, and he can send it on to you guys. Yeah, other examples, if you wanted to see, just go on to the Florida website, for example, and there's all kinds of what we would consider exemplar newsletters from districts. And if there's a model school board process, which I don't think there is one in Texas right now, but eventually, I know that's a goal that the state does have to move in that direction. And so at some point, if that were to occur, the district coordinator is making sure if there's an application process that the schools are submitting and overseeing that. Questions about the district coordinator's activities? The reason I wanted to make sure that we covered this is because oftentimes it's usually the person whoever contacts the service center first gets that new title. Whether they wanted it or not, they were just the ones who made the phone call. But I think it's an important discussion that the district leadership team has on who that person likely should be, because what they need to understand is that these are all new things added to their plate. And so a district leadership team needs to understand that there may need to be something removed if they truly are able to do it with fidelity, essentially. All right, principal's role. Who are the principals that are here? Raise your hands. Okay, so this pertains to you. Again, maintaining standards regarding the innovations in your school that they're going to be implemented, making a public statement of support once the faculty has selected. So if you guys have selected, you're using PBIS, making a public statement, this is what we are doing. You are the leader, the main spokesperson about that. Making sure that at your school you've established a representative leadership team. Supporting those team members to have the time to accomplish the tasks that they need. Guiding rather than dictating decision making. Taking a leadership role to model and reinforce implementing the innovation. Regularly attending and participating in team meetings. Providing recognition to faculty and the team for their hard work. Serving as a spokesperson to community stakeholders, and establishing an objective means to monitor and provide feedback to staff. This one, although it's the last one, I actually think it's the most important one. Because what I see way too often is that I see that administrators will say they're happy their team meets, they've got the posters up, they're having their events, but they will not stop and correct a teacher who all of a sudden they'll hear someone yell, "Shut up." Or they'll say, here's somebody go, who wants to Volunteer. Oh, let's see if you can get this right, this answer right today. No, we need to correct that on the spot. We need to take that person aside and say, you know what, that is not being respectful to our students. If we want our students to grow to be respectful and responsible, we need to treat them with respect. We need to set the conditions up that they will be successful. That student is not going to answer you because you've already set the bar this low. And this is not what we are, this is not what we're about at this school. That's what we need from our leaders. And as a district leadership team, that's what you need to demand from who's going to be leading your schools, or else you're not going to see the outcomes that you want in your students. And that's going to be the hard part. Because too often we'll see people go, that's just her, or him, you know. It's like, no. How much damage has that done? That student may likely drop out because of that one comment, or how many other comments have been made. That's where we have to stop. And this is where, for you guys as a district leadership team, you guys have the power to change the culture in your district. Okay, I've got some districts that say we want to be the #1 district that people want to buy a house in our district because of our schools. Okay, then what's it going to take for that to happen? And it's going to take our leaders to make sure that the people working under you are actually part of that vision and following and leading that vision. Okay? But I think what's important is that we learn over time. And so we learn that, you know what, it probably would be really beneficial if we invest on building the skills of our administrators, maybe before we even start training our teams. Think about that video I showed you, that adult learner issue. Well, before we even start training our teams to train our students, maybe we need to train the overall leaders of the schools first, what we expect them to do. And there's whole separate trainings on administrator trainings now that are available, but something for you to think about. It's also something for you to think about is what are you going to expect of new administrators applying for positions? Okay, so let's look at what is coaching. It's a set of activities that provide facilitative support to build that capacity of teams to implement either MTSS or PBIS. Typically, it's not one person who possesses all of the skills necessary to implement, particularly MTSS if you're looking at the academics and behavior. But if you're looking at PBIS, it could be one person who truly has the behavioral expertise. And what we found with coaches, it's not just the behavioral expertise. But actually, what's more important is they need to have facilitative experience. They need to be able to facilitate a team through conflict. They need to be able to facilitate a team and lead them through action planning. They need to be able to come up and say, you know what, the data look great here, and this is why they look great, but it doesn't look so great here. What are we going to do about it? And make sure to try to keep that team on track so that they can continually improve. All right, and there's different forms of coaching even for you guys. So there's coaching that you want to make sure that the school teams identify that you're supporting those coaches out supporting the school teams. But then the Region 19 is going to need to be coaching you guys as a leadership team so that you can be effective in coaching the rest of your folks in your district. So like I said, it's not necessarily a person because, but it could be several people on a team. But who's going to be the main point person? Okay, so for you guys, if you're thinking about your school-based teams, and something to think about, well, maybe there's different activities, there's different that folks need to do, but essentially we want you to have one point person. I have some school teams where districts will say, you know what, our high schools, they definitely need 4 coaches, 1 for each grade level. Okay, well that's fine if the district leadership team determines that. Let's make sure to convey that when it's clear what those coaches' roles are for those grade levels. All right, here's some examples of what coaching activities are. Facilitating effective teaming and collaboration, ensuring fidelity of implementation. They're the communication link between the district and the school team. They provide the expertise in whatever content area. They're engaging in that structured problem solving so they know how to move a team through database decision making. And if there's an application of model school. Essentially, these are the 3 main areas. Facilitation skills. And like I said, we found that this has been the most important of anybody. Collaborative problem solving skills, being able to take a team through that problem solving process using specific details of our plan. And these are where you guys are going to start to engage in some initial discussions here. We're going to talk about how your team is supporting PBIS. Now, you guys are just starting out, so you can talk about how you would like to be able to support it, okay? For you guys, you can talk about how you have supported and how you want to improve it. And then you guys can talk about what you're going to do. I know you've done some, obviously, already, because training's occurred. We're going to identify some of the barriers, the resources, and then our enablers. We're going to work around these components. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving you guys through these various sections, and you're going to find that section here on your action plan, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to start discussing what you may need to do to build this particular section. Knowing that you're not going to be able to get everything finished, you won't be able to finish your complete conversation in each area, but it's going to get you started, so you've got something to leave with. Essentially, this sheet here could look like one big sheet here. And what I used to do in the past with district leadership teams is put kind of big butcher paper up on the wall. We would talk about the dream, which is part of our vision, what's your dream for the district, and people would write it. Then we talk about what the strengths are. We talk about some of the barriers that we've had in the past. And then from there, we'd start to jot down some big 5-year goals. And based on those 5-year goals, we'd work backwards and then say, so what do we need to accomplish in a year? And then based on that, we would start to say, okay, specifically, who's going to be our coordinator? How are we going to deal with visibility and political support? How are we going to deal with evaluation? How are we going to deal with training and coaching? This is another way to look at this document. All right, so let's talk about you guys as a leadership team. This would be the first section. And I want you to use these as kind of some guiding questions to help you determine what you may need to do differently. So if you guys are not meeting that frequently, one of the first items you might want to put is you need to set up a schedule for the next school year, our regular meetings to talk just about PBIS, or carve time out of existing meetings that you have that are going to be talking about PBIS. You need to recruit any other people. Is it really clear what your roles are on the team? Okay, we've talked about roles on teams. We talk sometimes in schools. There's a leader, there's a data expert, there's a recorder, there's a timekeeper. Some district leadership teams want to add that. You guys may not feel it's necessary, but the key is who is going to be carrying the main agenda, who's setting the agenda, who's taking the notes, and who's carrying this active action plan to each meeting and keeping it up to date. And all of you are in different areas for this, but thinking about how long have you been in that position? Is there, and here's the big question for this, is there enough FTE allocation for that person to truly be the district coordinator in your district? And some of that depends on how many schools do you have actively implementing, or who are going to be actively implementing. All right, so what I want you to do is think about this district coordinator role and think what needs also to be improved upon that. So if you have a district coordinator identified, do you need to figure out how to allocate more time so they can do it appropriately? For you guys, is figuring out who might be the best person for that. Do they have decision-making authority? Some districts have made the mistake of just pulling somebody that they had a teacher on assignment, a special assignment, as the district coordinator. Well, do you think she was able to get the administrators to come to training? You're like, who are you talking to? I don't think so. So you have to think about those politics and seniority levels within your districts. And then what are the strengths of that district coordinator? Who would be the ideal person to serve as that spokesperson? All right, let's talk about political support, visibility, and policy. This is actually a few pages ahead. I realize my slides are not matching with the titles I put on the action plan, so sorry about that. But if you're following your action plan, it's actually page 5 of your action plan. Let's look at this. Does your district have some documented MTSS, policies, and procedures? Is PBIS included? Some of you may even have policies around RTI, I don't know. Okay, that's going to make a difference if you guys are going to be moving towards using Swiss, for example. There's required, it doesn't have to be the exact same form, but there's required fields that are necessary on the Office Discipline Profile. Are there procedures around behavioral screening that you guys have established within your district? For example, are there any type of universal screeners that you're requiring? Are there some type of data decision rules that your district has set up? What they want your schools to be following? Is there particular paperwork forms around this tiered process and supports? You know, what guidance are you providing, if any, to your schools on determining which students need more intensive supports? I know there's guidance around if students hit 10 or more suspensions, then something happens, right? So go back even more. If there's students with, failing after so many grades, do you have some type of early warning type system that you recommend for your schools? I'm just giving you flags to think about where you may have some policies and not realize that's what we're talking about. What strategies does your district use to increase visibility within the community and across the district? Does your district have awareness or buy-in, active involvement from senior level administration? Well, that's irrelevant because you guys are here. But what are you going to need to maintain your buy-in? So you as a district leadership team member, what's it going to take for you to continue to stay on board for this? And not being, well, as long as I'm still employed, and they keep inviting me to meetings, but what would you need to still stay interested in this? Okay, I want to show you a video, and this is a video of a school district in Georgia. It's the Gwinnett County, which is kind of the Atlanta area. It's not Atlanta Public Schools, where there was a big scandal and all that recently. It's a different district. But their district coordinator is extremely active. And so I'm not sure offhand, I can't remember how many schools they have. It's well over 100. But I think they did a nice demonstration video because they wanted to get the word out of what PBIS was in their district, and so they wanted it as an awareness. And so I want you guys to just look at it. It's something that was developed in-house by them, but they're using it as a marketing strategy. So think about for yourself what could help with your district.
Welcome to PBIS, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, an operational framework for improving student academic and behavioral outcomes. This is not a curriculum, but rather a decision-making framework that can be customized to the specific needs of each PBIS school. PBIS helps school personnel provide evidence-based academic and behavioral interventions for all students. Since Gwinnett County Public Schools began implementing PBIS in 2010, many schools have experienced a decrease in disruptive behaviors and issued fewer office referrals, resulting in improved school climates and a better learning environment for all students. The focus of PBIS is to recognize students who are doing the right thing. The school develops 3 to 5 behavioral expectations for all students throughout the school. These expectations are easily stated and easy to remember. For instance, be respectful, be responsible, be ready. The expected behaviors for the classroom, in hallways, and on the bus are posted throughout the school. The faculty explicitly teaches these expectations and encourages students to meet them. When students are seen meeting these expectations, they are recognized for their appropriate behavior. PBIS is based on multi-tiered systems of support and is designed to fill both behavioral and academic needs. Tier 1 applies to 100% of the student body and promotes good behavior through prompts and redirection. However, not every student responds to this approach. For that reason, some students may need more targeted group support at Tier 2. At Tier 3, a few students with ongoing behavioral issues receive intensive and individualized support. For PBIS to function successfully, a school-based PBIS team meets monthly to review disciplinary data. The team might review types of problem behavior, the locations, times, and days on which incidents occur, as well as the average number of referrals per day. Once the team has identified problem behavior and determined why it is occurring, team members will implement a strategy for change and then evaluate its success. PBIS is supported at the district, state, and national levels. Prior to fully implementing PBIS, your school will spend a year assessing its needs, training its staff, and completing readiness activities. Beginning in the fall of the readiness year, your school will identify a PBIS coach and team members. Your faculty and staff also will complete a self-assessment survey to ensure that your school's efforts are successful. Your school's PBIS team should include an administrator, a PBIS coach, a data analyst, a behavioral specialist, and several teachers. During this readiness year, the specific roles and responsibilities of these team members and the PBIS coach will be established. Prior to launch, your school's PBIS team will attend a 3-day training session to assist its members in the general operation of the PBIS framework and how to implement it with fidelity. The team will learn about the benchmarks of quality, BOQ, used to measure the success of the implementation at your school. After this training, in the second half of the readiness year, from February to August, your school's PBIS team will meet monthly to prepare for the launch. Team members will work to develop expectations for the school environment and determine what these expected student behaviors should be, such as citizenship, accountability, respect, excellence. The team will discuss how these attributes will be displayed throughout the school. The PBIS team also will work to create faculty and staff buy-in, obtain input from faculty, staff, and parents, formalize a system of recognitions and rewards for good behavior, and train staff on how to implement PBIS with fidelity in the classroom. Your PBIS team will meet monthly to address discipline issues and oversee the implementation of the framework. The PBIS district coordinator will complete walkthroughs at your school and provide technical assistance to the PBIS coach. The team also will complete and submit the Team Implementation Checklist, or TIC, in the fall and spring semesters, as well as the benchmarks of quality in the spring. The TIC and BOQ are evaluation tools to inform your school, your district, and the state about how effectively your school is implementing PBIS. These activities will help the Georgia Department of Education to recognize your school's level of proficiency with PBIS. As your team operates effectively, you can expect to see declines in office discipline referrals and in-school and out-of-school suspensions. From 2011 to 2014, Gwinnett County elementary schools participating in PBIS decreased office discipline referrals by almost 18%. While participating GCPS middle schools saw a 21% decrease, and participating GCPS high schools cut their average number of referrals by 52%. As an operational framework for improving behavioral and academic outcomes for all students, PBIS is supported with the help of national, state, and local technical advisors. By committing to operate the PBIS framework consistently, your school will be on the road to a school climate change for the better. And when school is a positive place to be, students have a greater opportunity for academic success.
We believe at Richards that just as we give students academic interventions to help them be more successful, they need to be afforded those same behavioral interventions and someone to help them every day and to be given extra opportunities to make better choices. PBIS helps us do that.
PBIS has allowed us to decrease the amount of time and human resources necessary to deal with negative behaviors and focus more on the positive behaviors of the vast majority of our student population.
PBIS has benefited our school in a number of ways, but the most significant way has been over the last 2 years, we have reduced our office referrals by 75%.
PBIS has really changed the culture of our school. We have gone from a school that really focused on discipline to a school that now focuses on positive student behavior. And our students have become teammates in their classrooms. They help each other out. They help each other to be great citizens in our school.
But they started pinpointing, this is what it means to get it in the school. They know they've got some administrators that are naysayers, they don't want it, they're going to be the last to come to training, the last round of it, but they're saying we're changing the climate of our district. So this forces you guys to go back and look at your vision, to say, wait, do we need to make any adjustments in our vision? Because that's going to help develop some type of product. I'm not saying you have to develop a video, but it's just an example of a type of product that you can have to get the word out there and disseminate the information. Any questions about that? My only critique on that is all of the information is accurate, but it's extremely fast talking because they're trying to get it under 6 minutes. So that's why she was talking really fast in it. But I want you to think about what do you want folks to know about PBIS in your district? And who do you want to know it? Is it your family? Is it your community members? Is it an issue of getting the rest of the administrators and keeping your faculty on board? But what is it that they need to know? Okay? What do you want them to know? And then that will help you determine what's the best method to get them that information. Whether it's face-to-face conversations, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's stuff on your website. Okay? So when you get back to that section of dealing with political support and visibility, I want you guys to think about addressing that area of your action plan. Okay? All right, coaching. I'm not going to spend time right now talking about coaching because I want to get into some other things, but you guys will have to table it. I think it jumps back to maybe page 2 or 3 on your action plan. Again, I apologize for that being out of order. But I want you to think about what are you going to do for coaching? Are you going to have just internal only coaches? Or are you going to have both internal coaches and somebody external from district checking in with the schools? Or are you just going to have external? Like I said, there's no research that shows that you must have one way, but what we do know is that research shows if you have coaches that are helping with implementation, that you're going to see greater results. But whether they're internal, external, or both, that part hasn't been teased out yet. I want you to think about how are you going to monitor those coaches. Is that something that you're going to determine as a district leadership team, that you want a certain group, whether it's your guidance counselors, you want them to be coaches, or like I said, you're going to let the schools administrators determine themselves who they're going to be. Well, if that's the case, provide them some guidelines of who may be an appropriate person based on what you want those coaches to do in your schools. All right. I want you guys to think about, we already talked about your level of implementation. How are you going to determine your training needs? This is going to start to get into evaluation. In fact, let me just jump to evaluation right now. Because a lot of you have your evaluation pieces, data in front of you. What I'd like you to do is take a few minutes and start to look at it. If you have your VOQ data, go through and look and see what types of scores you got. Remember, a 70 or higher on the VOQ means you're implementing with fidelity. Now, for your team that doesn't have VOQ, you guys may want to talk about what's the structure that you're getting the VOQs, what's the timeline for that, who's going to be inputting that data, are you going to be less than Manny, are they putting in the PBI's assessments, and what's the timeline that you guys want to use to review? All right, for San Elizario, something I want to point out for you guys that you have, for those of you that have those scores, those are the individual item scores you have for the schools. But there is also a way that we're working on pulling together that data so that you can compare it across all of your schools, across your district. So you can see all elementary schools, all middle schools, that type of thing. I want you to look areas in which your schools overall scored low in. That might be something you have to think about. What do you need to do to boost? One of the districts, their faculty commitment is scoring low, kind of across most of the schools, so they're looking at it as a marketing strategy. What do they need to do? Okay, so I want you to think about, of these data, this is a final version. Okay, final version here. This is actually Miami-Dade. We did this for the first time with them. And this is Miami-Dade's version they came up with. They had their 3-year goal. They had a series of 1-year goals here. We worked backwards their current situation, who they needed to enroll as partners in their community, what their strengths were across the various component areas, And then based upon their 3-year goals, they develop the 1-year goals, and then they develop some 3-month steps, 1 step, and what's our next step. This is it, kind of on steroids in a nutshell, okay? Now, for you guys here, because you've got 39 of the 90 schools trained, but you're just getting OQs for the first time on those schools, my recommendation, and in fact for all of you guys, is to start thinking about what would you like to see in 5 years, but to me what I'd rather have you change this to is in 3 years. Okay? So in 3 years, what would you like to see? So I know an example, I'm just going to pick on you guys because I was just overhearing your last conversation. But El Paso ISD, there sounds like there's a lot of people out in the field that are still engaged in the old RTI model, or I shouldn't say RTI model, the old model of you get so many referrals, you're sent off for special ed evaluation, which is not an efficient model, where RTI is actually looking at, hey, you're not responding well to Tier 1, we need to provide additional interventions. It doesn't necessarily mean referral to special ed. But people in practice are doing kind of the old way. How do we change that? So I would think one of the things you want to think about in 3 years, we want folks to be implementing RTI as it's intended, or PBS as it's intended. So for you guys, I want you to think about, based on some of your data, you know, a great one for you guys. In 3 years, we want all of our faculty on board for PBIS. Okay? So then we'll work backwards. In 1 year, what does that mean you have to have done? What do you have to have finished? Is it some type of product? Is it some types of conversations that you need to have? But that's where you're going to help to develop some of those goals. Okay? You want to be as specific as possible because you want to be able to measure it. Because you want to know if you've actually made a difference. You've made some progress. Make sense? All right, so some final thoughts. Again, that leadership aspect is absolutely critical. That partnership that you've got with the with Region 19, if there's any university partnerships, I know they've partnered with the university as well. Standards and protocols developed. So for example, if you set up some type of early warning system for your schools, or if you say, listen, we're going to engage in universal screeners, we recommend that schools screen students that are not responding well to Tier 1 for more intensive interventions 3 times a year. Okay, it's important that you have some type of protocols established. If there's anybody who's newly hired in your district, how are they going to find out about PBIS? What's going to be some of the protocol for that? If there's a new child that transfers in, a new family, how are they going to be informed of it? What are you going to expect your schools to do with that? Training capacity, where are you getting your training from? Is it all coming from Region 19, or for some of our districts, they want to start developing some of their own internal trainers? Ongoing technical assistance, ongoing evaluation, progress monitoring, making sure you're using the VOQ, and using your SWIS, that those schools are entering the data. They're using their data for decision making. Considerations. Remember, solicit input from your stakeholders. Figure out who they are, paying attention to that implementation science that I talked about, knowing that you all are in different implementation levels, and that's perfectly okay. Being aware that you're going to hit obstacles. Attitude is going to be the first one. Okay, people say, what's in it for me? Why should I do it? That's classic systems change problems. People won't change because they don't see why they would need to change. 1, they don't know what the problem is, and 2, they don't know how that's going to help them. Once you can kind of work on that to get them to understand that, then you might have a greater likelihood. Or maybe they need to go towards another district to move towards. Preferably, I think, you know, if it's your district, you're saying go elsewhere. I'm sure these 2 districts are like, don't look at our way. So, all right. Think big. How can you get PBIS in all of your schools? If you also happen to have, if there's any juvenile justice programs, residential day treatment, early childhood programs, where do you want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? How are you going to educate about PBIS? How are you going to provide all of the needed components? What do we need to maintain and sustain over time? So, let's go back. So before you go, you have about 6 minutes I want you to start to jot down your 3 and 1 year goals. In fact, just focus on 3 and try to get some 3-year goals, knowing that your task is going to have to be to complete your 1 year goals, okay? Like I said, today was the Cliff Note, abbreviated version of this district action planning. Let's take 5 minutes to jot down what you'd like to see in 3 years. If you'd rather focus on 1 year, that's fine too. We're up there, we're talking, let's craft out your vision, let's talk about your goals. Now, based upon this, let's start to look at district coordinators, coaches, when training should occur, how we're going to market it. Once you get a year of data behind you, and you've got data to come to those meetings, then those leadership team meetings, we revisit the vision, we revisit the goals, but then we get straight into the data. And that's where we say, okay, based on the data, who are high implementers, who are low implementers? Based on that, let's categorize and determine, do we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type schools that need those additional supports? And based upon that, how do our student outcome data match with those fidelity data that we've just categorized our schools? Then based upon those results, are we ready to move on for more training? Do we have teams that need to go through booster, refresher training? Do we have teams that need to go through full-blown training, retraining altogether? Do we have teams that are ready to move on for tier 2 or tier 3 type training? Okay? But what do we need to change for our political support, policy, visibility, dissemination, based upon that data? So it becomes the data drive those meetings around those implementation components of funding, visibility,